Welcome, everybody, back to There Will Be Bets. I am your host, Cole Oxane. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Drew LaSalle. And Drew, my God, we're about 24 hours removed from one of the crazier finishes to any sporting event I've ever seen. And that's just not even a lie. It was insane. For anyone who missed it, and I don't know how you could have, we saw the Elite Eight end with UConn coming back from 19 points down to hit an insane game winner off of an insane turnover to knock out Duke from the tournament. It wasn't the only thing we saw this weekend, but it was the thing this weekend. How are we feeling after that, Drew? Let's start there. We can touch on everything else after that, but how are we feeling? For those who said March was gone, I think March is back. I think this was the one thing we can for certain say is that March is back. How are you feeling off of this? Are you buzzing like I am?
There's very few things in America that you can get excited about collectively like Duke losing a big game. So yeah, absolutely buzzing. What had to be the best finish we've seen in a tournament game, maybe ever. I think Jenkins took 3-pointer to win the title against North Carolina probably just takes it because it was such a high magnitude game, but yeah, everything had to go so right for UConn in the last minute for them to be in that position, and I'm at a loss for words just thinking about the sequence of events and what Duke could have done, taking a timeout before Boozer tries to throw it up ahead. They didn't even need to get across half court. They had less than 10 seconds on the clock, so they could have just sat on the ball in the back court, but. What a way to end an incredible weekend. We'll get into the other games, but yeah, had a wild one myself and couldn't be happier to be talking it through with you.
Yeah, sitting on my couch, I actually was watching this game with my dad. He coached basketball for a long time, played Division I basketball, and you know that when someone who's been through that much basketball has no words for what he just saw, like that's how you know it was an instant classic, because even he was like, there's 19 things that you could have done to not end up in this spot, and yet we're here. And I know we're not going to be the first people to cover it. We'll be far from the last to cover it. I think it's a little premature to have the whole is John Shire the problem conversation, because I know obviously what people are talking about is the Houston meltdown last year, this meltdown. They've blown some other leads. Again, let's pump the brakes. You have to be in these positions to have these things happen to you, and that's also coaching. That's my take. But again, it was incredible, and I think it's a testament to an attitude that Danny Hurley brings for all of his crazy antics. And I know that clip of him like headbutting the referees going around, still not 100% sure if that's AI or not. I really am not, but I know that clip's going around. Everyone's talking about how much of a psycho he is, but this in general is good for college basketball, like all of this. Again, for whatever reason, Duke just grinds people's gears more than any other school, and when they go down, people get buzzing. And again, the sport was kind of going through a lull, especially after last year being all the one seeds. We had some crazy finishes late in the tournament last year, but I think the big story coming out of it was, hey, there's no more upsets. And while I know that this is not a lowly underdog, another thing lost in the shuffle here, I know everybody hates Duke. UConn has more national titles in the last 30 years than Duke does. So this whole, like, everyone's so happy Duke lost. Do we understand that we just watched them lose to a team who's actually been more dominant than they have? It's a whole weird dynamic because they're just not Duke. But again, that aside, I think that it gets people buzzing again. I'm super excited for it. And I think that matchup-wise, it actually sets us up a little bit better. Now, a Duke versus Michigan-Arizona title was probably the ultimate goal. I think talking about the other two winners here, or the other three winners, I guess, with Arizona and Michigan being such a clash of the Titans stylistically, and then you take this Illinois team that was able to take care of business and match them up with UConn, I think it actually makes for a very fun clash of styles there, too, to where we should get two more fun, more competitive games, I think, at least stylistically. So I think that's what excites me, too, is not only did we get this huge excitement, we actually got a more fun matchup, in my opinion, than what would have probably been kind of a slog in the Duke-Illinois game. I don't know how you're feeling about the Illinois matchup with UConn, and then obviously we can hop over to Arizona-Michigan.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. You're right. Very much difference of styles in between Illinois and UConn. Illinois can kind of want to speed the game up at times, but they're also much more comfortable than they have been in previous years to kind of slow things down, control pace in the half court, and they have the guys that can cause a lot of problems for a lot of defenses, including Iowa's, who it was probably the most competitive game through 30 minutes up until the UConn ending. But Iowa stayed with them. Sturts was fantastic in that game. I mean, pour one out for the Bens. What an incredible run this season to be in that position. Just especially with how poorly they were playing down down the stretch of the regular season, losing first round of the Big Ten tournament. But yeah, incredible effort from Iowa. I think Illinois was the rightful winner there. I don't know if they should have covered or even won by as much as they did, but appreciate it nonetheless. But yeah, this UConn matchup, I'll get to it with my pick, but uh, I think Illinois is comfortable kind of playing into what UConn wants to do, and that they'll slow the game down. Everything with UConn kind of works through Reed. They look to get to Caravan and a few others who continue to struggle shooting threes really up until the last 2 minutes of that Duke game. But yeah, a lot to break down in that game, and of course the game of the century, as you coined it, between Arizona and Michigan.
Yeah, this Arizona Michigan game we'll touch on here in a minute. Just to wrap up the UConn Illinois, obviously we'll get into our picks as well. I'm leaning one way, you're leaning kind of more on the total side of things. I think it's all going to kind of align in the same way in the end. But I think it's going to be a fun matchup. And I guess before we jump into the obvious team that no matter who wins will be the favorite, do you think that either Illinois or UConn has a fighter's chance going into the title, whether it's Arizona or Michigan? Before we again get into that, do you think that's the case, or are we seeing the national title game being played on Saturday night?
It's that narrative is definitely the talk of the town, and that Michigan Arizona game is, like you said, the real national title game, and that either of these teams aren't going to pose much of a threat. I don't know if I'd go that far. I think you probably see somewhere in the range of a 3 to 5 point favorite for Arizona or Michigan against one of these teams. Illinois probably a 3-4 point underdog. So I mean, that wouldn't be anything crazy if Illinois came out and had a good shooting night. I mean, like I said, they got a lot of offensive weapons that can pose problems to a lot of different teams, and I think they'd be at the biggest disadvantage on the boards against Arizona and Michigan. But I'll touch on some of the weak points of both of those teams in a bit. So I don't think it's a no chance. We're not seeing a UConn San Diego State final from a couple of years ago where we kind of knew who was going to be winning that one. So I think it's still anybody's ball game.
So here's the funny thing when it comes to me just looking at this holistically from the Final Four perspective is I think this looks a lot like probably the UConn Purdue title to me, where it's like I could see either of the teams coming out of that left side of the bracket, whether it's Illinois or UConn, hanging around for a half. Like they're talented enough, they've got good enough players, but in the second half, the superior team just pulls away. I can't remember what the spread in that game was. I want to say it was in like the 6-7 point range. That UConn team was so dominant, it's hard to gauge it. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head. I'll have to look it up here, but either way, I think that's probably what that game ends up looking like. I think especially if it's Illinois, they have at least the length to maybe give those teams some problems, like you said. But I think in the end, it's basketball. You never want to say anything. Obviously, we literally just were proven that you can never say never when it comes to college basketball in the tournament. But I do think that your national champion come Monday night is playing in that late tip-off. I do. I don't know who it's going to be. I have my thoughts, but I think your national champion is coming from that game if I had to say it.
Purdue was a 7 point underdog in that title game 2 years ago. So, yeah.
Which
ended up losing
so
by
crazy
15.
with Zach Edey on the roster. Wow. Yeah. That's so crazy. But yeah, all right. So it probably won't even be like you said. Maybe if it's UConn, it could be that price. I don't see Illinois being a 7 point dog. So that's probably the case there. But all right. Enough of that. I think we covered most of what we wanted to talk about. Again, Purdue, I guess, is the one of the team we can mention. Hung around with Arizona for a half. Obviously, they did lead at halftime, but talent and depth just won out in that game. Purdue showed really well. You were there in person to see it, so you can kind of give the first-hand report. But to me, it just looked like you had one solid team and one elite team. That's what it looked like to me watching from the couch.
Yeah, I think that was the case in the 3 games. Just different points in the game. Illinois, Michigan, Arizona differentiated themselves from the other team as the clear better team. Arizona, it happened at halftime. Michigan, it happened, I think, 8 minutes into the game. And Illinois, it really took about 30, 35 minutes for them to pull away. But in the case of Arizona, yeah, I mean, SAP Center was silent at halftime. I didn't know what had happened. We went up 19-13, I think, with 12 minutes to go in the first half, and just could not get into our offense, and went on a really bad dry spell, and we're staring down at a 7-point deficit in which every time Braden Smith was in the pick and roll, I felt like he had an open look from three. Like he was 3 of 6 in the first half from three, but all 6 of them were uncontested, wide open. And as much credit as I want to give that team and Tommy Lloyd for the adjustments that they made, I feel for Purdue. Braden Smith rolls his ankle, I think 2 minutes into the second half, and you go back and watch the highlights. He was not the same player. He was clearly limited by that ankle injury, and the offense really wasn't running through him very much in the second half. You saw them go into TKR a lot more often. Fletcher Lawyer tried to get involved, but just did not have his best shooting night. And yeah, very, very scary halftime deficit, but Arizona came out with a fury and really from the jump in the second half, and ultimately proved to be the more dominant team.
Yeah, you're right, 100%. And even, let's be honest here, like, I know college basketball happens, and it's exactly what happened in the Duke game, but even for 30 minutes of the Duke game, talent was winning out. Like, we did see talent went out. It's just, that was the one game where that 10 minutes where the talent didn't win out happened at the end. All the other 3 games, it was just different, right? But so, I think we saw that in general with the 4. Again, the Michigan game was really tough. You know, Tennessee just didn't have it in general. They showed up. They got a few offensive rebounds to start the game. Couldn't even capitalize on those. And Michigan just juggernaut is what they looked like there. I will say, and we can get into it with the handicap on the Arizona game as well, is Arizona now at least was tested, which I think is good for them. I think that team hadn't really been tested other than the Iowa State game in the Big 12 tournament, hadn't really been tested since their losses in February. I think that's probably good for them. I think Michigan has been tested a few more times, especially given the fact that they lost in the Big 10 tournament and they played a tight one against Wisconsin in the Big 10 tournament. I think now you're on an even playing field again, where both of those teams have had recent tests. Usually every champion has to go through 1 or 2 of those. So I think now, again, we're on an even playing field there. There's no advantage either way. All right, well, that's enough of us just rambling about what we saw and what is coming. Let's talk about the Final Four. So as we said, it is set. It's UConn versus Illinois. It's Michigan versus Arizona. You got 2 1 seeds, a 2 seed, and a 3 seed. A nice little mix for those who care about the numerology of things. And again, it's kind of a matchup of styles, one marquee matchup, one almost undercard matchup. It kind of all goes pretty nicely for how, from an entertainment perspective, you want it to go. But one thing we did want to bring up is, as we've been doing every round of the tournament, we're trying to find some trends, some angles that you can use to apply to your wagers coming up for that particular round or that particular weekend. Obviously, it's the Final Four. There's less stuff going on. We'll intertwine a few things in our handicaps, but one thing that really stood out to me when I was crunching the numbers, and this you see a lot in just handicapping in general of most postseason, and that is that teams that win cover. It's just the nature of being a small sample size and tighter spreads. But if you look at the Final Four since 2001, the teams that win outright are 39-7-2 against the spread. That means they're 81% against the spread when they win. So whether they're an underdog and they win, obviously that's the case, but that means there's very few times they're landing inside the number and not winning. And it means that these favorites are winning and they're covering the number pretty much no matter what it is. Now, in the case of our Final Four this year, the spreads are both under a possession. So that means pretty much you are picking the winner. So the only real thing I can tell you on that is if you're looking at the dog in either situation and the juice, especially by the book, is a little wacky on the number you're looking for, you might just consider taking the plus number on the money line, considering the fact that 8 out of every 10 times they're going to win that game. And that's, again, any number, not just these small numbers. So that's what that means. On the contrary, if you're somebody who usually likes to take a juiced money line with a favorite to protect yourself, I'm one of those people more often than not. What this trend tells you is that in these high-stakes games, chances are they're going to cover that short number if they're going to win the game. So again, if you're looking at heavy juice on the money line, maybe just go ahead and lay that -110 or that -115 on the 1.5 or the 2, depending on which of these games you're looking at. That's kind of all we really want to say. They're more of a PSA, not necessarily a trend to give you an angle on the game, just to tell you that whatever side that you tend to favor on the number is also the side you're favoring on the money line. So make sure you adjust accordingly. Don't let the books take more juice from you than they have to. That's really kind of all we wanted to bring up there, because that just doesn't fit into our handicap on any other angle. All right, well, before we get into the actual pick segment here, as always, if you're enjoying this video, please do go ahead, leave a like on the video. If you want to see more from us, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell as well so you get notified whenever we upload. You'll see all of our stuff through the rest of the tournament. We'll cover the championship game come Sunday night, get you ready for Monday's game. And then again, it's not going to stop there. As you've heard us say before, we're going into the NBA playoffs. We're going to be covering that stuff and into the off season for all the different sports, baseball this summer. Everything you want to see, you want to make sure you're subscribed and sticking around for that. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell as well so you can stay tuned with us for the entire journey through the rest of the calendar year. All right, well, we're through another 2 rounds of the competition. There's no real blowout here yet. I have managed to jump in front of Drew, take a small lead. I'm currently up 24 points to 20. It was a good week for me. I hit the Iowa moneyline dog. Drew hit his Tennessee pick. So that kind of even out. I got the extra point on him with Iowa, but I think it just came down to a couple of little key plays here and there. But now I hold the 4-point lead over him. The way we're doing it this round is it's just 2 picks. You get a 4-pointer and a 3-pointer. So there's still very much a chance for Drew to overtake me. I can kind of pull ahead of him too going into the Monday night game. We'll see how it plays out. But we're going to pick. We each have a pick from one of the games and then the other, so that way we cover every aspect of both of these games for you guys. But it also, we decided not to go head-to-head. I did very much consider, especially we'll talk about Drew's number 1 pick here in a second. I did consider just going head-to-head with him, but I thought that'd be no fun because then it would really just make the competition come down to 1 game. So decided not to do that. But anyway, that's how the competition's going to go here, but at least it's been a fun ride. Without further ado then, Drew, it's the 4-point play, and at least this is on brand. I'd have been very, very upset with you. You would have gone the other side of this game. But what is your first pick, your 4-point pick for the Final Four?
Yeah, I got carried away with my weekend 3 Rick Barnes love, so that blew up in my face pretty quickly. But for my Final Four first overall pick, I got to take the Cats, going with Arizona. Plus 1.5 is what's out there in the market. Lot to dig into here. These, as you mentioned at the top, 2 highest power rated teams, not only this season, but a combined adjusted efficiency margin of the best of any team any matchup we've seen in the Final Four ever. Better than Houston and Duke last year by a couple points. These 2 teams have shown to be the best in the country, and rightfully so. So let's dig into it a little bit. So both really strong defensive teams. Adjusted defensive efficiency for both. Michigan number 1, Arizona number 3. But the further I dug into how you beat Michigan, let's start with just defending them. To defend Michigan, the way I see it, you got to do 2 things. You got to defend the 3 well, and you got to defend without fouling. You look at the Purdue loss in the Big Ten title game. You look at the Wisconsin game. You look at any game where they've not covered. I know Arizona has to win this pretty much to cover this number, but they generally struggle from 3. So they stay under, let's say, 40%, 35%, somewhere in that range. And then they get to the line less than 15 to 20 times a game. Arizona, defending the 3, top 40 nationally, effective field goal percentage. Defending without fouling, Arizona also top 40 in that category. So I think they match up okay there. I don't see them getting bullied by some of the bigs that Michigan has. That's an area I think Arizona can hang with Michigan just fine. It really, I think, comes down to those 2 categories when it comes to defending Michigan. You flip to the other side of the ball. How do you score on Michigan? Michigan's best piece of their defense is defending the 3. Top 3 in the country in effective field goal percentage from 3. Well, that's not really where Arizona thrives. Arizona plays very much an inside-out style. They get it inside to Pete, Krivas, and they work it outside when the doubles come, when things break down inside. You really don't see them, other than maybe the first half against Purdue, get 2 3-point happy. So I think you see this doesn't really change much for them on offense. I think they stick with what they know. They play through their 2 bigs. They stay in the pick and roll with Bradley that sets up the rest of the offense. And I think a lot of the same for Arizona. I see a lot of advantages on the offensive side of the ball. Do I think they're going to hold up on defense against Michigan completely? No, but I do think those 2 categories they grade out pretty well against. So outside of that, trend-wise, did want to talk through a couple. Tommy Lloyd so far in his tournament career, both NCAA and conference play with spreads 4 or less, is 6-1 straight up. Since 2014, a lot of talk around first-time coaches in the Final Four. since 2014, coaches facing a coach who has been to the Final Four. Dusty May went there with FAU. They're 12-5-1 against the spread. So positive Tommy Lloyd trend there. Curious to get your thoughts on this one. There's obviously a lot that goes into both of these teams, and trying to define kind of flaws in either of these is a bit of a challenge, but I do think there's some positives on both sides offensively.
Yeah, so I guess it came down to a few things for me. Is number one, I won't lie to you. Going back to a couple weeks ago, we picked our Final Four. I picked Michigan to win it all. I had them playing Arizona in that game, so call me Nostradamus like everybody else. I saw this one coming. I wanted to make the case for Michigan. I told you before this, I wanted to go head-to-head with you. I wanted to make the case for Michigan. But when I really dug into the numbers earlier today, like you said, a few things became very clear to me that I think Arizona has more key advantages. I think that the one way Michigan wins this game is by getting hot from three, getting ahead of Arizona, and making them play that chase game and forcing them to have to shoot more threes, which plays into their defensive scheme. I think that's the path for Michigan. I really do. Has anyone been able to do that to Arizona this year? Not really. Even the teams where they've made them feel a little bit uncomfortable, whether it was Purdue in the first half, whether it was, some of these other tighter games they played in the Big 12, like Iowa State, or, the Kansas game where they ended up losing. All those games, they never really were in that position. So to me, that's the number one way that Michigan wins this game. But the part that you touched on with Michigan, even in your Tennessee cap against them, is that this team struggles against offensive rebounding, which is weird. They're a big team. They're very big on the wings. They have massive centers in the middle. I think Mara is an absolute vacuum cleaner, but apparently not as much as you would think, right? When you look at it, Arizona is also not amazing against offensive rebounding, but the difference is that Michigan is actually like in the top 10 or 20 worst as far as like the Power 5 goes, whereas Arizona's more middle of the pack. And on top of that, Arizona is an elite offensive rebounding team. Michigan's a good offensive rebounding team. Arizona is elite. I think we credit Owaka mostly for that, but Krivas is kind of a beast too. And then Pete and Burries can get there. So like they just have a lot of guys that crash the glass. Also by the nature of how they play, they're not shooting from out as far. They're all closer to the rim. It just makes sense, right? That's how you get more offensive rebounds. I think that that's going to be the difference in this game. I think everything else you outlined makes sense as far as the things Michigan wants to do. They're going to be the ones that have to adjust their style more to meet Arizona than Arizona's going to have to adjust to beat Michigan. But I think it's going to come down to the offensive glass. I think he won't be the most outstanding player just because of the nature he's not truly an offensive killer. I think Toby Owaka is going to be the difference maker in this game. We talked about doing props for this episode. If it wasn't for the fact that I live in a state where for some reason we can't bet college props, so I just didn't have a good number to go off of, I looked at Toby Owaka rebounds as one of my props. Like that is the angle I see being the difference maker in this game. So all that being said, when it came down to it, I also followed the trend we gave out at the beginning of the video. I said, you know what, just give me Arizona on the money line. I took them like plus 105, whatever I was able to get in the market at the time. I'm backing you here as much as I wanted to be on Michigan. I think it's Arizona's year. I think it's starting to feel a whole lot like 1997. And obviously, this is the biggest test they're going to face all season. I think they're going to get it done.
Oh, love to hear it. Yeah, thank you for covering the offensive rebound. I can't believe that I left that part out. Have it in my notes. 20 offensive rebounds for Tennessee in that Elite Eight game. All it means nothing if you go 5 for 27 from three, or you can't follow it up in any way. But yeah, don't think that'll be the case for Arizona. But yeah, Michigan outside the top 215 nationally in offensive rebounds given up per game. Kind of insane considering the personnel that they have. But I mean, I even talked about it too. I think maybe offline. I don't think we talked about it on the podcast last week. But yeah, Arizona can be susceptible to them as well. You saw Clough really dominate much of the first half in that Elite Eight game. Had, I think, 4 offensive rebounds himself, but tightened it up in the second half. And I do think that's a place that Michigan is very vulnerable. And as you alluded to, I think Owaka and Pete and company are primed to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and then the one final note I have on this, on why I think I give just a slight edge to Arizona, is if you look at kind of the matchups that you're going to be projecting, I think the one other thing Arizona has is their best offensive players will not be guarded by the defenders that scare me the most on Michigan. Whereas I think if you look at the matchups for Michigan's offense, we probably assume, you and I talked about it ahead of this, we think it's going to be Koa Pete that's going to be on Yaxel. I think that's a great matchup for Arizona. I think Koa Pete is a versatile defender, and it's not like you're wearing out your top offensive guy covering their best offensive player. Then you look down low. A lot of times when Michigan can't get things going outside, they dump it down to Mara, and he's able to make things happen because he's bigger and longer and can just kind of get those little easy baby hooks. You're not doing that against Krivas. And even if it's not Krivas, like if it's a Waka that's on him for a while, whatever, a Waka is dude's made like a brick shit house. Like you're not moving him. Amara's going to have to try and go up over him, and it's going to be a lot tougher for him. So I think the defensive assignments for Arizona are a little better. And Michigan's guards, they're good at forcing people into the paint because they trust that they've got the bigs down low. But if you're telling me that I'm going to get Jaden Bradley and Burries going towards the rim already against smaller defenders who I don't think are as elite on the move in general, I like a lot of the matchups I'm getting there. Like I said, I think it just makes sense. I think Arizona's just got a little bit more versatility because of the way that their lineup is built. It's just the other reason I'm giving the edge to them. Again, not to discredit Michigan. Michigan's a very good team. And again, like we said, there's a world where Michigan is hitting their shots and playing at their tempo, and Arizona just has to chase. But I just think that if you look at the scenarios, out of 10 of them, I think 7 of them lean me towards Arizona, whereas there's only about 2 or 3 where I see Michigan winning, and that's why I ended up on Arizona.
Yeah, I agree with that. The Pete comment around on Yaxel, I think you see maybe a mixture of Karchenkov, Owaka on Perez Johnson. Yeah, I think there's that's what makes Arizona so hard to play against, is like the length that they have and the versatility on offense, to where you don't have your primary offensive guy matching up with the primary guy for Michigan. Like they're so interchangeable with what they want to do on offense that you don't really have to expel your energy on one side of the ball or another in like take away from what you might be needing to put in on the defensive end.
Yeah, I think that's well said, and I think that we can cap it off with go Cats.
Bear down.
It'll be a big night for both of the LaSalles on this show, the whole LaSalle family, all of Tucson. It's going to be a big night. I'm excited to watch the game. You rarely get these like popcorn matchups that actually happen when you look at them from the onset of a tournament, and we got it. So like we just have to be thankful we're getting this matchup. We hope it lives up to the snuff. We get all the pageantry. We're gonna have Bill Raftery on the call. If we don't get at least one onions out of this game, thank God he didn't pass away after watching that shot in the Duke game. I don't know if you saw that video clip. We almost lost the GOAT when he saw that happen, but we're gonna get him for this game. I'm pumped. I'm very excited, and it's all Cats, baby.
I almost cried when the clock ran out in that Purdue game. I can almost guarantee that I will if Arizona comes through in this game. So yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah, and then of course we can spend 2 days talking about the whole no team west of the Mississippi has won a title since Arizona did it. How fitting is it that it'll be Arizona doing it again? You know what? I think the storylines are just better if Arizona wins too. So we'll root for it. It'll be fun. But as we said, that's only one half of the situation here. And there's another game, and it's where my 4-point play is going to be coming from. I'm going to take Illinois -2.5 against UConn. The reason I'm taking Illinois is pretty simple. It's kind of the same handicap that we've been using with Illinois all tournament. Illinois' size is a problem for every team in the country. They are actually top to bottom the biggest team in the country. They're bigger than Florida. They're bigger than Arizona. They're bigger than Michigan. If you just match total height, total length, all that stuff. And we saw UConn for 35 minutes struggle with the size that Duke has, and Duke is not as big as Illinois. On top of that, this UConn team thrives and makes their living off of ball pressure up top, and we've talked about it ad nauseum throughout the tournament. Illinois does not turn the ball over. On top of that, they don't foul, which actually in this game worries me a little bit. I actually don't hate the idea of fouling Terrace Reed a bunch because he's been shooting like 58% from the free throw line, so that actually could work a little against Illinois, ironically, in this case. But overall, they don't put guys on the free throw line. The rest of this UConn team are guys that I wouldn't want to put on the free throw line, so at least we don't have to get them there. And speaking about free throws, again, I think Terrace Reed's dragging this number down a lot, but when you look at teams that are shooting 75% or better from the free throw line versus teams that are shooting 75% or lower from the free throw line, it's a wide disparity in against the spread outcomes in favor of the better free throw shooting team. It's like 75 or 74% against the spread in the tournament. It's a crazy, weird trend. Again, I don't know if it always comes down to a high volume of free throws, and you could pick that stat apart. But basically what that's telling you is that the better free throw team is the team you want to back. In this case, it's Illinois. So on top of all that, just in general, other than the 4 threes down the stretch for UConn, these guys haven't shot the ball well in a month and a half. I mean, going back to the Big East tournament and late in Big East play, they have not shot the ball well. Alex Karaban doesn't look like the Alex Karaban we all know. Braylon Mullins has been off and on. Now, maybe his confidence will be through the roof after, hitting the miraculous shot, so maybe he turns on. I don't know. But again, I think that length's going to be a problem. And as we've been talking about, kind of the theme of the show here is offensive rebounding. Illinois proved it against Houston, who's supposed to be a rebounding juggernaut, and we saw it be a problem for UConn against Duke. Is offensive rebounds are a problem because other than Terrace Reed, they're kind of soft on the interior and on the wings. So Illinois team crashes the glass, and take me to the Balkans, man. These guys from Eastern Europe, they love to rebound, they love to put the ball back. I think it's just a lot of mismatches here for this Illinois team. So I think Illinois has gotten the right draw thus far. I think, and they avoided another bad draw, which would have been Duke. I think that this is a great spot for them to be that type of team that just gets the right matchups with the right talent, gets all the way to the title games. Give me Illinois to win this game. I think they cover the small number. Go ahead and lay the points. I'm taking Illinois to move on to the championship game.
Yeah, I haven't touched this game yet. I have a lean towards the pick. I don't disagree with Illinois. We've had a lot of love for them really since the tournament started, and I know you had some Final Four futures on them as I wish I could say as well. I did not, but yeah, I've been backing them since the Penn game, and they've really controlled each and every game they've played in. Like I said, pulled away a little late in the Iowa game, but yeah, I said it at the top too, like just the matchups that they create with their length, like 6'7", 6'6" at both guard spots, outside of Boswell. It's just very hard to kind of stay with those. And these aren't guys that are trees either. Like they can move, they can distribute. It's a tough ask for any team, even as good a defensive team as UConn is. I mean, I think the only thing that poses a threat to your play here is that UConn does finally find it. Like that, talk about a team that is so due for some 3-point regression, and I know they got a little bit of it right at the end of this Duke game, going 4 or 5 in the last couple of minutes. But I think that's the only thing I can kind of point to is like UConn, for as much as we've doubted them as a podcast and as much as the national media has kind of doubted them, a lot of people were circling that UCLA matchup and the Sparty matchup, and we're like, oh, no way they make it past Duke. And sure enough, Dan Hurley finds a way. But yeah, I think the 3-point regression is the only thing that kind of gives me a little bit of pause. But I do think that Illinois' size on offense is an issue, but it also could say the same on the defensive side as well. And if they're able to kind of contain Reed, who UConn really relied on in the early parts of that Duke game to keep them in it. So yeah, no disagreement here. Haven't put anything behind it, though at this point.
Yeah, I think you bring up a fair point. And obviously UConn, that's the argument with them all along, is that if they can get it put together, their offense is good enough that if they're shooting the ball well, they will be able to take care of pretty much any team in the country. We've seen them do it all season. They have risen at times, but we've also seen them put out some stinkers. And I think the unsung part of this game as well is, like you said, is Terrace Reed has been the anchor that this team has been able to just hold itself in place with all tournament. The one thing that people I don't know if are acknowledging yet is that all of Illinois' bigs, as we know, can play outside. And if you pull him out of the paint on defense, their defense becomes very susceptible. And then on top of that, the way that Illinois plays their defense, it could put him in a lot of like those mid-range situations where he is not comfortable either. So I think that this is a very uniquely bad matchup for him. Whereas even against a team like Duke, he's able to just post up on the low block. He's able to sit there and play against the center or whoever the big is at the time and play where he's comfortable on defense. I think that it's just a different look, and they definitely have not seen anything like this, especially in the Big East, because of the way a lot of those teams are made, and half of them can't throw the ball in the ocean. It's just going to be such a different matchup for them that I do really like what we're getting out of Illinois here. And you're right, coaching could be a problem too. Brad Underwood, I don't hate him as a coach. At times I have questioned his decisions this year, previous years. No doubt that Danny Hurley's got the edge there, at least from that standpoint. So, maybe there's something that Danny Hurley's going to cook up on 5 days rest with a lot of prep time. You just never know. You can't count out a guy like that. And I mean, as we know, he's a psycho. So, there's no limits to what he'll do or what crazy things he'll pull out. But again, overall, I think just Illinois has enough of those unique matchups to put UConn in some unique positions. And I think usually it favors UConn that they play in the Big East with such a physical, weird style. I think it's going to hurt them in this case because Illinois just plays a style that they're not used to seeing, and it just does not favor them.
Yeah, don't disagree with that. I mean, I do think the point you made around Reed being kind of pulled out, it's not where Illinois' offense is. It's at its most efficient when their bigs are shooting. Like all their bigs kind of trended like the 29 to 31% range from three. So it's not exactly like the beacon of efficiency if when Illinois is really humming on offense. But I do think it's a fair point, at least to try to open things up for Wagler and for Stojakovic to kind of have some more room to operate in the paint.
Yeah, no, I think you're pretty in line there with everything that you said. It kind of backs up what I was saying. So I think we kind of agree there. Like you said, I know you haven't gotten to the window yet, but it sounds like you're at least not going to step in front of me, which is good. Same way I did with Michigan. I wanted to make the case and couldn't. So at least it gives us kind of a fun thing to root for here, where we're on the same side in a pseudo way. So at least that's fun for the first two picks.
One other note on Underwood: 9-3 in tournament games when he's had extended rest against the spread. I think Hurley's 10-3, but still a good data point for Underwood being in what I think is kind of an underrated coach at this point for all the shit he's gotten over the years.
Yeah, so there you go. Maybe that negates a little bit of what I was talking about with the Danny Hurley edge. And like I said, I've never been a hater of Underwood, but I've understood the criticisms he's gotten for some of the teams, especially those those Kofi Coburn teams, or when he had a bunch of NBA guys. I can understand where the criticism came with how he handled some of those teams. Nonetheless, that's a good stat to throw out there. It gives me a little bit more confidence when that was kind of one of the parts I would have worried about. So glad to hear that too. Look at Drew pulling out the trends and stats that I don't have. That's a good note there.
Trends McGee over here.
But all right, so like we said, we're gonna jump into our 3-point picks here. We're both going an element of a total on this one. Drew, yours looks like it's gonna be cutting the game in half. How are you approaching the one you're picking?
Yeah, I'm going UConn, Illinois, first half under. It's between 64.5, 65. Look for the best number you can get out there. We touched on it even at the very beginning of the show, just a real conflict of styles in some elements around Illinois, really at times wanting to run and kind of being comfortable with that, but because of the size and some of the versatility they have with their guards, they're kind of comfortable in the half court, and depending on the matchup, I think that you could find them kind of slowing things down a little bit. And UConn really tries to bring games to a halt, really try to force teams into the half court, don't really allow too much from a transition perspective, which Illinois will at times try to do. But for me, I think part of this handicap as well is the emotional piece. UConn coming off one of the greatest comebacks in tournament history. Obviously, a little bit more of a gap in between the games rather than this being a one-day rest period. But I do think that that's part of it. I think you could see some of that play into the early game tip off for Saturday and the first game in Indianapolis, new venue, a little bit of that. But one piece trend wise I did want to throw out. So closing totals, first half totals between 63 and 74.5, full game over unders that open at a number and close either a half point or more above that total. So money kind of pouring in on the over, and then overs that have 60% or more of the bets. So right now, I think this was sitting at like 85% of the bets have come in on the over for this game right now. The under, first half under, that is 204, 164, and 8. So about 55, 56%. So pretty good trend for this first half under, along with all the different pieces I talked about, the emotions, the matchup itself. So yeah, give me this first half under.
Yeah, the social media crowd's going to love that we just gave out another first half under. They just were so thrilled with how it all went when we gave those out in the first round. So I'm sure they'll love you for that.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I think everything you're saying makes sense. Even take the trends out of it. The trends are strong, but take them out of it. I think exactly what you're saying makes sense. That stylistically, it could be a feeling out process. There's always that element of they're playing in a giant stadium that's a football stadium. It's not a basketball stadium. The rims are different. The balls feel different. The depth perception's all screwy. The court is raised. Like all that crap, that could be the difference between the extra 4 points the total needs to go over, and it doesn't right there. Then you throw in the fact that there's that emotional edge, and it's like, again, how even after 3 or 4 days, you're walking around feeling like you're the king of the world if you did what UConn did. So I don't care if it's 3, 4, 5 days. It could be still a problem. And then, like we said, on top of it, schematically and stylistically, there's absolutely ways that Illinois can cause problems for UConn, and even that UConn can cause problems for Illinois. So, put all that under. I definitely would not look first half over. And out of the two games, looking at the totals, this is not the one that I was looking to go over. We'll talk about the one I am going over on in just a second, but this is not the one I was looking at for those reasons, just because I was concerned about what happens if the defenses show up to play. Again, I was thinking full game, but I think first half it makes sense too. Plus, then you take out the fouling game, because in a Final Four game, of course, no team is going to give up, especially after what UConn just did. You think that team's given up? You think Illinois is going to let anything slip through their grasp either? No, they're going to foul. They're going to fight through the very end. So the last thing you want to do is take the full game under, have it lose by 3 points because of something like that. So I get the first half look here. I think it all makes sense when you count in those trends. I think you're on the right side of the number here. And if you're playing a total in this game, I like the way you're playing it.
I'm not about to step in front of the getting banged on a full game under. That happened 3-4 times in the first round for me. So yeah, first half under, stick with it. Don't care what the haters say.
Hey, at least it does fall in that trend we talked about of it. You want it to be a lower first half total. That's one of the key factors to make it a playable edge. So at least it lands in that spot. So that way, hey, at least now we can prove the haters wrong.
Exactly.
They didn't believe us.
Gonna go 2-2 on these plays. So suck on that.
Yeah. That'll bring us to my total. I'm going the opposite. Drew wants to take a first half under. He wants it to be an ugly, nasty first game. Well, then you know what? I want the popcorn to be worth it on Saturday night. Give me the over 157.5 in Arizona versus Michigan. These two teams are the best two teams in the nation. And what wouldn't be more fun than the best two teams in the nation playing a high-scoring game? The reason we're looking high-scoring here is when you look at the Final Four. When you look at totals, it tends to be, again, like we've talked about before, the odds maker's kind of telling you the answer. When the total is listed low, it's below 140, tends to skew under. When it's above 150, it tends to skew over, because what they're telling you is that these teams can score, and these lines are pretty dialed in at this point. So it's going to be a high-scoring game, and when there's more points, there's more variance, which gives you more chances to go over the total. So that's why I like the overlook here. On top of that, we covered it in the breakdown of the teams versus each other, but the offensive rebounding in this game, both of these teams give up an inordinate amount of offensive rebounds, particularly Michigan. Arizona is also very, very good on the offensive glass. But what does that mean? That means second chance points. That means more chances to put the ball in with less time coming off the clock. Therefore, you can get your path to it over a little bit easier. On top of that, both of these teams not only shoot high percentages from three, in Arizona's case when they shoot them, but they still do shoot at a high percentage. Michigan, a great three-point shooting team, but they're also both top in the nation when it comes to two-point percentage. And that's really the key to getting an over in college basketball is you have to make the easy ones. You have to make the close shots. At the end of the day, three-point variance comes and goes. You can never bank on it for it to be an over, but the one thing you can always stay consistent with is two-point percentage. Again, these are two of the most, if not the top two-point shooting teams. Maybe not 1 and 2 by number, but just by the way they play, they're some of the best top two-point offenses in the country. On top of that, one last thing that you might worry about is depth, especially after playing a long tournament and it being a high-intensity game, that maybe you get some stretches where teams go cold. These are probably the two deepest teams. They can bring 6, 7, 8 into the game at any point. You trust them all to play. You trust them all to score. So I like that we have that in our advantage, too. It means that these teams shouldn't slow down or want to slow down in any capacity. I think that both of them mirror each other enough. They're going to play an up-paced style no matter how the defensive scheme comes into play on either side of the ball. It should still end up being high-scoring. I think we have a good chance to go over the total here. And for the same reason we like a first half under, I like a full game over. If it gets late and it gets close and there's fouling, both these teams shoot the free throw well, you have a chance to get over even if maybe you shouldn't have otherwise. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take the over in this game.
Yeah, I don't disagree here. I haven't touched the total in this game, but it's definitely where I would lean. Of my Arizona breakdown, at least between the offensive piece and the defensive piece, most confident in Arizona's ability to score on Michigan. So yeah, that's in line with this over. I think Arizona all season has been comfortable in the half court. They've been comfortable in transition. So I don't really think there's a need for Arizona to dictate a certain pace. If Michigan wants to speed things up, I think Arizona would be more than happy to oblige. But yeah, I'd a lot of love for this total as well.
Yeah, so both them and Michigan were over 50% to the over as well. I was curious because I knew I had seen a stat like that. So just in general, these teams, and again, we've talked about some teams played them at different styles. They had good shooting nights, they had bad shooting nights. We have a great sample size across the season. Teams tend to just be over teams, and now they're playing each other. I think it matches up. And I agree with you. I think if I had to rank, again, you talk like units the same way we talk about it in football. Obviously, it's a little more mixed together when you talk about basketball. But if you're ranking both teams' offenses, both teams' defenses, I put Arizona's offense number one. I agree with that. And then I probably end up putting Michigan's offense number two. It'd be a close battle with their defense at number three. But I think it's going to be both the offenses one and two. And so, again, if you tell me that I like both the offenses number one and two, it's really, really hard to look anything but points in that game. So, again, I think it all kind of lines up. I think it could be fun. And you want to talk about just like a little bit of an emotional side? I don't want this game to be a nasty slog. That's just no fun. That'll get some hate. We want this to be the exciting, movie piece of cinema as far as sports go that we all want it to be. So I want to put my hard-earned money on the line to maybe make that happen. So that might be the last piece of why I'm going to go over. But I think everything we laid out makes perfect sense. I think over's the way I'm looking here. I'm hoping that maybe it'll at least be a fun way to end our little competition too. Maybe it'll be the part that puts me over the top because obviously, again, I got that 4-point lead. So maybe we go all the way. Let's say Arizona's cruising to a nice, comfortable lead for you. We've both taken care of our business in the Illinois game, and then this just going over in the second half is what gives me the win or something like that. Maybe that's what it'll be. So personally, I might hope for it to be that situation too.
Be more than happy with that. I will root for anything that involves an Arizona win. So if it's the over, by all means.
All right. So those are our 4 picks. I think we pretty much in detail covered both of these games. I think we uncovered every rock we pretty much could on those. And again, we kind of had some consensus. There was no real disagreement as much as maybe we wanted to in some spots, but we're kind of all in line. It's we like Arizona, we like Illinois. We like it to be a lower scoring game, at least in the first half, in the Illinois UConn game. Again, maybe lean full game under, but prefer the first half. And we think there could be some points in the Arizona Michigan game. We think it's going to be, if we had to pick it, it's going to be Arizona versus Illinois for the national title. But we will be here on Sunday to break down whatever the matchup is. If it's that, great, we'll pat ourselves on the back. Drew will be happy off the Arizona win. If it's not that, if it's a Big Ten rematch, we'll be there to break that down. If UConn gets it done, plays either of those teams, we'll be here to break that down too. So it'll be fun. We'll see how it plays out. We've grinded all season for this. These are 2 great matchups, 2 great teams, big programs. The whole nation's involved as far as the geographics go. So it's going to be a fun one come Saturday. I'm very excited for it for you. Any last thoughts before we head into the weekend, Drew, on any of these games or anything that we forgot to mention?
Yeah, I haven't looked at numbers specifically, but I did see some love in kind of, I think I'd call it like the exotics market around kind of like betting the outcomes that you kind of think are going to happen. So if you really love Illinois, like you think there's no way Illinois loses to UConn, betting and Arizona wins the title and beats Illinois, and then splitting like a half unit apiece between Arizona beating Illinois, Michigan beating Illinois. So if you subscribe to the Illinois winning, but they're not going to beat either of these Arizona or Michigan team, kind of an interesting bet to I think I saw like somewhere in like the 5 to 6 plus 600 range for those outcomes. So interesting thought, just to put it out there, something that I'll explore a little bit more as we get into the week as well.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, actually. I like that as a look, and I think that goes either way, especially if you're going to favor whoever comes out of that Arizona-Michigan game. I think it makes sense to just pick your winner and then double down on them in that UConn-Illinois game. I think that makes a lot of sense. And as someone who has a UConn stage of elimination to be the title game, like dart I threw at the beginning of the tournament, I kind of hope I basically have one of those exactas going. I have a UConn to lose to either of those, or just I bet it a different way. But I'm rooting for that type of outcome too.
It also will allow you the opportunity in the title game, should Illinois win, to shoot for a middle, hedge a little bit off with the Illinois money line, because they will be like we talked about, like a 3, 4, 5 point underdog against either of those teams. So yeah, a lot of opportunities there.
Very fair point too. And again, UConn goes the same way. It's really just a matter of if you think you have a strong feeling in that first game, go ahead, double down on it, play it to its maximum extent, give yourself as many outs as possible, make a little bit of extra profit. That's always what we want to do. So that's a good shout by Drew. We'll call that the bonus play of the week. I'll co-sign that one. It's a good fun one that we can throw out there to give the people a little something extra going into the weekend here. But all right, that'll wrap everything up for this week. A little bit of a shorter episode. Obviously, we only have a couple of games. Like we said, we will be back Sunday to put out an episode where we break down the Final Four and what we saw, and we'll give our predictions for the national championship game on Monday. So that'll be a quicker, shorter episode we put out on Sunday, but stay tuned for that. If you did enjoy this episode and you rode all the way to the end of it with us here, leave a like on the video, hit that subscribe button so that way you don't miss that Final Four or that Final Four reaction, that title game preview, and again, everything else we have coming down the road. Hit that or that bell as well so you never miss an episode or an upload from us. Stay tuned to our social media this week. We're putting out clips and data and all of that good stuff as well. And then you'll want to stay tuned on all of those platforms as well as we continue into the future. But otherwise, thank you guys again for watching and enjoying this ride with us. We wish you guys the best of luck in all of your wagers on both of these games. Let's have an exciting Final Four, and we'll see you guys on Sunday to break down the national title game.
Bear down, baby. Let's go.